Hi everyone, my name is Rachel Jones, and I did the missionary biography of Jerry Rankin, who is still living, but he was born in Tupelo, Mississippi in 1942, and he came to know Christ around the age of 10 at a Billy Graham crusade. And he even just felt the call for missions at a really young age. I have a quote where he recalls his heart being stirred towards missions in a geography class. He was overwhelmed with the massive numbers. They studied Confucianism, Buddhism, and their religions and cultural worldviews. And he could tell that these are people that are living a life and dying and going to hell by the millions and millions, not because they rejected Christ, but simply because they had never heard of Jesus. And he said, I thought very distinctly, why don't more missionaries go and tell them about Jesus? It was as if God reflected that thought back into my heart to recognize that there is a potential in my life of doing that. And I never got away from it. I even knew right then that it was a distinct call of God, and that is what I was to do in my life. So even as early as 8th grade, Jerry knew that he would be a laborer for the Great Commission to be fulfilled. So after high school, he went to Mississippi College, where he got his Bachelor's of Arts, really felt his call to do lifelong ministry, and he met his wife, Bobby. And after graduating undergrad, Bobby and Jerry moved to Texas for Jerry to attend Southwestern Baptist Theological Seminary in Fort Worth to receive his master's in divinity. And during his time in Texas, he served as a pastor of one church, an associate pastor of a different church, as well as the Baptist Student Union director and Bible instructor at Grayson County Junior College. So he just had a number of different roles in his time in Texas. But ultimately, he wanted to go overseas. In June 1970, the Rankins were appointed missionaries by the IMB to Indonesia, and they would spend the next 23 years of their life there. And he, even there, did so much. There's a quote, he says, in our earliest years in Indonesia, Bobby taught our 2 children at home, so they left with a 10-month-old and a 2-year-old. And he said she taught English classes to students and had Bible studies with local ladies. And Jerry said he spent his time out in the villages, following up contacts, starting churches, discipling new believers, and training lay pastors in a growing network of house churches. So before returning back from Indonesia, he became the regional field director for South and Southeast Asia in 1982, and they lived in Bangkok during that time. And then in 1986, he transitioned to serve as administrator for Southern Baptist mission work in India, and he held that role for about 8 months before he became the area director for Southern Asia and Pacific from 1987 to 93. So during that time, he oversaw over 480 missionaries in 15 different nations, and he was able to lead training seminars and disciple lay leaders all across South Asia. So amazing mission work in Indonesia. So after 23 years overseas, the Rankins returned, and after about a year, Jerry was appointed the president of the International Mission Board. And he even said himself, coming back, it was crazy to be put in that role because he'd been overseas for so long. He felt very technologically unsavvy to be doing those types of things, but really it's his heart, I think, that gave him the job because he wanted to see the Great Commission fulfilled. And you see that in his work with the IMB. He did so much to get the Southern Baptist churches just involved in seeing their part in fulfilling the Great Commission and sending laborers overseas. So he led them to participate in the Great Commission and to partner with the IMB in a time when denominational structures were extremely confusing as they're fighting to see just the Bible as inerrant. But I really think the sweetest part of their story, after serving for 17 years with the IMB and retiring, they returned back to Mississippi, and they have their 2 children that they took overseas with them are both now married, and they each have 3 kids of their own, so they have 6 grandkids, and both of their children have spent time or are currently serving overseas as missionaries. So his heart for missions is just so clear. If you go listen to anything he says today, he continues to serve as a professor at a local college in Mississippi, but he also just does great work in begging people to answer the call to go on mission as laborers.